It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, and the scent of apple pie filled my kitchen, the kind my granddaughter, Lily, always loved when she was little. She used to call me her pie fairy, sitting on the counter with flour on her cheeks and stars in her eyes. But that day, things were different. She was 17 now, glued to her phone, her face framed by frustration instead of wonder. I asked her about college, about life, about dreams. She sighed loudly and said, "Grandma, you wouldn't understand. You're old." The words hit harder than I expected. I laughed it off, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside, something cracked. She kept scrolling, barely looking up as she added, "I don't need advice from old people who don't get it." I stood there, the wooden spoon trembling in my hand. For a moment, I wasn't her grandmother, I was invisible. Just an outdated relic in her shiny, digital world. I thought about all the nights I stayed up when she was sick, all the birthdays I saved to make special, all the love I poured into that girl. That night, I sat by my window, the city lights reflecting in my teacup. I thought about the college fund I had built for her, every penny saved from my late husband's pension, every sacrifice tucked away for her future. She had no idea what it meant to give up your own comfort for someone else's tomorrow. As the clock ticked past midnight, I whispered to the empty room, "Maybe it's time she learns what value really means." That was the moment everything changed. The days after that conversation felt hollow. Lily stopped visiting as often, always busy with school, friends, or her endless stream of social media posts. I still tried, texting her good mornings, sending pictures of her favorite meals, even forwarding her scholarships I'd found online. Most of the time, she didn't reply. When she did, it was just, "Thanks, Grandma." Cold, distant, mechanical. I'd sit on the porch every evening, hoping maybe she'd call. The wind carried the sound of laughter from neighbors, families sharing dinners, children running. And I sat there with an empty chair beside me, the one she used to fill. One day, I decided to surprise her at her part-time job in a little coffee shop downtown. I dressed in my best cardigan, wore her favorite lavender perfume, and brought her a homemade lunch. When I walked in, she froze. Her friends behind the counter looked at me curiously. And then she said, in a tone that sliced right through my chest, "Grandma, you didn't have to come. This is kind of embarrassing." Embarrassing. I stood there, clutching the lunchbox like a fool. One of her friends chuckled quietly, and Lily forced a smile, trying to make the moment disappear. I whispered, "I just wanted to see you, sweetheart," and turned to leave. As I walked out, I caught my reflection in the window, small, aged, out of place. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened the drawer where I kept all my savings documents, the college fund account, untouched for years. I stared at the number on the paper, remembering every odd job, every meal skipped to fill that fund. It was meant to be her key to freedom, to help her become something greater. But she didn't see the value of what I'd given her. Or maybe she didn't see me at all anymore. The next morning, I called the bank. "Yes," I said calmly, "I'd like to make a withdrawal." "All of it." The teller asked, "Is this for your granddaughter's education?" I smiled faintly. "No, I think it's finally for me." That was the day I decided to stop waiting for love and start living again. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. The fear, the guilt, the ache, they were still there, but softer now. Like the echo of a storm that had finally passed. I made a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and stared at the sunrise spilling gold across the horizon. For the first time in a long while, I didn't wonder what Lily was doing. I didn't check my phone. I just breathed. After breakfast, I opened my old notebook, the one I used to keep when my husband, Robert, and I were young. It was full of dreams we never got to live, trips we postponed, restaurants we never tried, a list of places we said we'd visit someday. But someday never came. He passed away before retirement, and I'd spent the years after pouring every ounce of love into my family, into Lily. I thought that was enough. But now, staring at those faded pages, I realized something. I'd lived for everyone except myself. So I went to the travel agency in town, the same one I'd walked past 100 times, and said, "Book me a ticket. Anywhere with a beach and a little peace." The agent blinked in surprise. "Just one ticket?" I smiled. "Yes, just one." A week later, I stood barefoot on the sand of a quiet coastal town in Greece. The sea breeze tangled my hair as the waves whispered secrets to the shore. I laughed, actually laughed, feeling the salt kiss my cheeks. At night, I sat at a small cafe overlooking the ocean. The waiter, a kind man with kind eyes, asked why I was alone. I told him, because for the first time, I'm learning that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. He smiled. "Then you're already living better than most." Every day after that, I painted. I danced with strangers. I took photos. I ate dessert first. I wrote letters to my younger self, forgiving her for always putting others first. Somewhere between the sunrise and the sea, I realized something powerful. I didn't spend Lily's college fund out of spite. I spent it to remember who I was before life told me to wait. And for the first time in years, I felt free. It happened 3 months later. I was sitting at a cafe in Santorini, sipping Greek coffee and sketching the horizon when my phone buzzed. Lily's name lit up the screen. I froze. We hadn't spoken in months, not since that day at the coffee shop. My heart beat faster as I answered. "Grandma." Her voice trembled, a mix of anger and confusion. Did you empty my college account?" I took a deep breath, watching the sunlight shimmer on the waves. "Yes, Lily. I did." There was silence on the other end. Then, she practically shouted, "Why would you do that? That money was for me." I smiled sadly. "No, sweetheart. That money was from me. And for years I saved it thinking you'd cherish it, but I realized something. You didn't need more money. You needed perspective." Her voice cracked, caught between fury and disbelief. "So you just took it? For yourself?" I looked around, children laughing, waves crashing, a woman painting seashells on a stall. "For myself," I repeated softly. "For once." "You're being selfish," she snapped. "Maybe," I said. "But tell me something, Lily. When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was? Or thank me for what I gave up for you? You wanted to learn about life without advice from old people. So I went and lived mine." There was another pause. I could hear her crying softly. "I didn't mean it, Grandma. I was just..." "You were young," I finished for her. "I know. That's why I'm not angry. I just needed to stop existing for people who forgot I was alive." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the sea in the background. Finally, she whispered, "Where are you?" I laughed gently. "Somewhere where the sunsets make you forget what you lost." "I want to see you," she said, her voice breaking. "Someday," I replied. "But for now, I think we both have lessons to learn." After we hung up, I felt tears roll down my cheeks. Not from guilt, but from release. For once, I wasn't the one waiting by the phone. That night, I wrote in my journal. She called to ask about the money, But what she really wanted was to find me again. Maybe losing the fund wasn't her punishment. Maybe it was her wake-up call. And as the stars lit up the Grecian sky, I whispered to myself, I think she finally heard me. The months rolled by, and my soul grew lighter with every sunrise. I had learned to breathe again, to live without waiting for validation, without clinging to the love I once begged for. Then one day, a letter arrived at my small villa in Greece. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. Lily. I hesitated before opening it, afraid of what her words might bring. But curiosity and love always win over fear. Dear Grandma, I've thought about our last call every single day. You were right. I didn't see you, not really. I was so busy chasing things I thought mattered that I forgot the person who taught me what love actually means. When I found out the money was gone, I was angry. But then I looked around my life and realized I'd never earned it. You did. You had every right to spend it however you wanted. I don't care about the college fund anymore. I care about you. I hope you're happy, Grandma. Truly. Love always. Lily. I sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands. The waves outside whispered softly against the rocks, like applause from the universe. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace, not the quiet kind, but the kind that fills you up until you can finally exhale the weight of years gone by. A month later, I returned home. When I stepped out of the taxi, the garden was overgrown, but the smell of jasmine still lingered, just like before. As I walked up the path, I heard a voice behind me. Grandma. I turned. There she was, my Lily. Her eyes glistened with tears, her hands shaking as she dropped her bags and ran toward me. When she hugged me, it wasn't the hug of a guilty child, it was the embrace of someone who finally understood. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. For everything. I smiled, running my fingers through her hair. Shoo. You grew up, that's all. She laughed through tears. Did you really spend it all? Every last penny, I said proudly. On sunsets, sea breezes, and the best meal of my life. We both laughed and cried under the fading light of dusk. That night, as she helped me unpack, she said softly, I want to live like you someday, brave, free, and happy. I touched her hand and whispered, then you already learned the lesson, my dear. And for the first time, I realized that love, when set free, always finds its way back home. The next morning, the golden light of dawn spilled through the curtains, painting the room in warmth and forgiveness. The house, once a hollow shell of memories, now pulsed with laughter again, the sound of coffee cups clinking, of stories overlapping, of love reborn. Lily and I spent the week together, walking through the park, cooking burnt pancakes, talking about her dreams. For the first time, she didn't talk about grades or careers. She talked about happiness, about purpose. I saw a fire in her eyes that wasn't lit by ambition, but by understanding. On our last night together, we sat on the porch swing. The sky above us turned shades of purple and gold, and the world seemed to hum in rhythm with our hearts. You know, Grandma, Lily said softly, I used to think money was freedom. I smiled, sipping my tea. And now I think freedom is living a life you don't regret. I looked out at the horizon, the sea stretching endlessly before us. Then you're already richer than most. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We didn't need more words, forgiveness had already spoken for us. That night, after she went to bed, I took out my old journal. Its pages were filled with stories, moments of joy, pain, and lessons I'd learned too late. But as I turned to the last page, I didn't write about regret. I wrote about peace. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming yourself, your joy, your worth, your time. The next morning, Lily drove me to the airport. She hugged me tight before I boarded, whispering, "Don't ever stop living, Grandma." I chuckled, "Not a chance, sweetheart." As the plane lifted off, I looked down at the city fading beneath me. The sun broke through the clouds, and I felt a strange calm, a sense that maybe life wasn't about holding on, but about knowing when to let go. Somewhere below, Lily was beginning her new chapter. And somewhere above the clouds, I was closing mine. But not for long. Because sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of another. If you think spending my granddaughter's college fund was shocking, wait until you hear what happened after I met a stranger on that flight. Airplane.